It seems like in the last year or so, the dress up genre has been experiencing sort of a renaissance. I would attribute much of this attitude shift to the immense multi demographic success of the Roblox game Dress to Impress. I haven't played it myself because the thought of playing a multiplayer game with chat features where the majority of the server at any given time could be 13 or less is completely repulsive to me, and also looking at a Roblox head for too long makes me feel like my life is coming to an end. However, I do appreciate how this game has drawn people into this genre who would have never previously considered it something that they would enjoy. More recently, there's also been the release of the mobile game Infinity Nikki, which has also proven to be similarly appealing to demographics outside of dress up games' typical audience of young women and girls. It seems like for as long as dress up games have existed, they've been considered a lesser type of game. Often brought up in the same sneering breath as Barbie Horse Adventures, an option for the shallow and feeble minded, and most offensively of all, girls. Nowhere near the kind of intellectual caliber required for the true elites of gaming, like make the plumber jump on the Goomba, or shoot the alien real good and real hard. Of course, the issue at its core isn't really any inherent problem with the dress-up genre itself, but garden variety misogyny. These games almost always make no secret about being deliberately targeted for an audience of women and girls, especially younger girls. And like many girl-targeted game genres, the games themselves also suffer internally from this attitude. If the dev teams take on the attitude that these aren't serious games, they're just meant to bilk money out of dumb she-babies who will gravitate towards anything with pink box art, then the final result will be drab, unmemorable, and often borderline unplayable. Which then in turn bolsters the public opinion that dress-up games are not worthy of attention and respect, resulting in a feedback loop of increasingly worse game releases and increasingly negative perception of the genre. That's why today I would like to talk about a game series that breaks this pattern. A truly fleshed out, fully realized franchise of dress up games that do not insult the time or intelligence of the people who play them. In fact, a lot of the dress up games that were released in the Wii, DS, 3DS era are very transparently clones of these games. I'm talking about Style Savvy, also known as Style Boutique, a series of 4 games, 1 for the Nintendo DS and 3 for 3DS, which were released through the late 2000s to the mid-10s. Let's take a look at these games in chronological order and discuss the gameplay, the differences between each release, what I thought of each one, the drawbacks and benefits of playing each of them compared to the others. By the way, if my recollection of these games differs from your memory, that's probably due to localization differences. In this review, I'll be discussing the North American version only. And finally, we'll end on the wildly disappointing spiritual successor to the series, Fashion Dreamer for Nintendo Switch. The first game in the Style Savvy series, known as Style Boutique for PAL region releases and Wagamama Fashion Girls Mode in Japan, was released first in Japan in October 2008 and internationally the following year in October and November of 2009. When you first open the game, you're greeted to a screen that's formatted sideways in comparison to the majority of DS games, which was a gimmick used fairly regularly back in the original DS systems but seems to have been phased out after the switch to 3DS. I personally love these sideways layout games. I love holding a DS like it's a little pocketbook. Like, oh, excuse me, please do not interrupt. I'm doing serious business over here. Oh yeah, that top looks good. Can I just say, I think the look of this game in particular is extremely cute. I love these pixelated, cel-shaded character models way more so than any game that came after. Something about how simple and flat their appearance is, the way they really play up that anime look, I find it extremely appealing. I actually find that the models that come after can sometimes come off as a little uncanny, but not these. This game establishes the setup that would be recycled in all of the style-savvy games, whereby the protagonist comes to be the owner of a hot new boutique. In this game, you get started by working at this boutique called Strata, run by your competent and mature manager, Grace, and staffed by girl failure supreme, Renee. She's that intoxicating mixture of stubbornly arrogant and aggressively incompetent that is just a recipe for a perfect character. Once you've made enough progress in this boutique, which took me about an hour, the store owner Dominic decides that you have the chops to run a boutique on your own, after which you're given your own storefront that you can customize to your liking. The way you customize this boutique at first will influence what kind of clothes your customers expect you to stock, but you're expected to diversify this selection over time. No matter what kind of clothes your boutique is geared towards, you'll be getting customers who are interested in all brands and styles, so it benefits you in the long run to try to have as much variety of stock as possible and not just cater to a few particular styles like a shop would in real life. I realized this after stubbornly trying to run a primarily Gyaru and streetwear themed boutique, only to continue getting customers coming in looking for Argyle sweater vests. The basic gameplay loop goes like this. Someone comes into your store and asks for a specific item, or occasionally something more broad, like an item you think would suit me. Each of the NPCs has their own taste and a preference for certain brands, and they either specifically instruct you on what style to choose, or you're expected to visually pick up on this based on the clothes they're wearing. This gets easier over time as you become more familiar with the different brands' items, although they can sometimes curveball you by not having a preference for a brand that they're actively wearing. Most of the time, you're going to be instructed to select only one item, but sometimes when you pick something that perfectly suits the character's taste, it'll show this extra cutscene animation and they'll ask you to either pick out one or two things to go with it, or if you're extra lucky, an entire new outfit. Every now and again, you'll need to stop at the Buyer's Center to restock on items for your boutique. All of the items that you can get from the Buyer's Center are sent to both your shop and to your personal wardrobe, so if you want to have some good old dress-up action without having to worry about customizing the outfit to the shopper's personal tastes, you can just visit your apartment and dress yourself up. My personal preference is to sort by this brand, which appears to be called AZUSA, but according to its brand rep is pronounced Azusa, and get in the tackiest goddamn outfit that I possibly can. Absolute animal print maxing, now that's what I'm talking about. This style, referred to as bold in every game that came after this one, is my personal favorite in general. And that's because I can either make a Type 1 bold outfit, where I actually put effort into making it look good, which comes out looking like a Bratz doll restyle most of the time, or a Type 2 bold outfit, which looks like an earthquake occurred in the faux fur section of Joann Fabrics. Along with being able to dress yourself up, there's a hair salon and makeup store that allows you to customize your player character further, although there's no changing your facial features and skin tone until you reach the end of the game, where you can customize one other character which can also not be customized further after the fact. The brands available in this game, most of which carry over to future entries in the series in one way or another, are Alvarado, which is the high-end luxury brand, Azusa, which sells streetwear and items that are inspired by certain Gyaro styles, Capsule, which sells retro-inspired items, GXS, which sells athletic wear, Karamomo, which sells Pan-Asian-inspired garments, Mad Jack, which specializes in punk styles, Penbridge, which sells preppy school uniform adjacent attire, there's Terra, which sells hippie stuff, and Pure Cloth, which sells basics. A few of the brands seem tangentially related, like April Bonbon and Daisy's, which both sell super vivid high contrast clothes, but April Bonbon is a bit more youthful and Daisy's a bit more mature. On a similar vein are the traditionally feminine shops like Epoch and Sonata, the latter being the more sophisticated version of the other. Finally, there's Marble Lily and Raven Candle, which sell Sweet Lolita and Gothic Lolita respectively. In English, all of these games avoid using the actual name of that style, instead opting for Princess or Baby Doll for Sweet Lolita, and just Gothic for Gothic Lolita, presumably to navigate around the fact that this word has a very different connotation in English than in Japanese. There's one last brand called Masquerade, and you can only unlock these items after winning fashion contests or when the brand has the exclusive item of the day in the Buyer's Center. Despite all of them basically being costume pieces, they're extremely expensive. Once you have your own boutique, the next added element of progression, besides unlocking as many clothes as possible and filling out your customers' stamp cards, are the fashion contests. These are headed up by a woman named Rococo, a flamboyant fashion mogul. This character has a pretty major localization difference from the Japanese version compared to the international releases, which is that in Japan, the character is a man named Pario. In this version, he has a mustache, goatee, and a slightly different outfit. I feel like every time a video game does this, they're severely underestimating the Western familiarity with the concept of queer men who are famous in the fashion industry, which has not been a foreign concept for long before 2009. I mean, the majority of iconic names in fashion design more or less fall under that umbrella. Maybe they were just trying to not come off as homophobic, but I personally don't think Rococo's characterization would come off as particularly hateful if she were portrayed as a gay man. Even if Pario's characterization is more overtly offensive in the original Japanese version, that could have been resolved by just removing the offensive elements instead of completely overhauling the character's identity. In my opinion, his appearance alone doesn't count as offensive, perhaps a bit stereotypical, but not to a degree that warrants censorship. My headcanon is that she's called she in a drag kind of way in the international releases, or perhaps she just transitioned. The fashion contests are generally pretty simple. You're given a preset selection of clothing to use, and so long as you pay attention to the theme and filter the items accordingly, you'll be sure to win every time. At least that's the case until you unlock the international contests, which both have more vague themes that can't usually be boiled down to one specific brand, and feel a lot more finicky in comparison. Once you complete the Platinum rank fashion contest, you're considered to have completed the game, and the international contests are post-game content. This game never actually ends, however, and you can continue buying new items and dressing up your customers to your heart's content. There are a few ways to draw business to your boutique if you're not satisfied with the rate of customers coming in. You can design an ad or flyer, which increase the likelihood of the featured items being requested, so be sure you stock up on the specific items that you're trying to sell. However, the functionality of the flyer was cut off after the discontinuation of Nintendo DS Online, which is too bad because I think I made a real banger here. You can also hold a sale, which increases your rate of customers. The primary utility of these sales is to free up stock space in your boutique so you're able to purchase new items. This game has a stiflingly small 500 item maximum stock limit, and you begin the game with much less, so there isn't really any portion of the game where you don't need to think about making sure you don't run out of stock space. Definitely not my favorite mechanic. This game has what I believe is the least problematic out of the series' real-time clock elements, which are that the buyer center will have different brands open on different days, new stock each day, seasonal items and customer shopping preferences that reflect the season, and certain NPCs only go shopping on specific days of the week. You don't miss out on much by not playing the game across several seasons, and you'll miss nothing by not playing across various times of day, and it's easy enough to wait until the next day for the buyer center to refresh. This game does not have an in-game day and night system, as the world of Style Savvy 1 exists in perpetual daytime. Occasionally, the NPCs coming into your boutique will ask to hang out. It's always optional to follow these up, but if you leave your boutique after one of these requests, a special area will open up on the map specifically to host this interaction. These don't really serve any specific gameplay value, but do serve to make the world of the game feel more vivid and fleshed out. There's also this in-game fashion magazine that is really just the highlight of how adorable and stylish this particular game entry is. It doesn't have a ton of gameplay value, and it doesn't affect you negatively to just ignore it entirely, but it really does look just like a crispy, cartoony version of a real-life 2000s fashion magazine. You get several opportunities to feature in this magazine as the game progresses. Your character has a bit of romantic tension with the owner of this city's boutiques, Dominic, but this game doesn't actually have any dating sim elements, so this doesn't go anywhere. They just kind of bait you into thinking that maybe you can date this guy and just don't do anything with it. And I don't know, if they're gonna introduce romantic tension, I'd prefer they just resolve it, even via an optional 30-second cutscene. Come on, Style Savvy, let me date this rich guy. Let's throw in Renee too while we're at it. Another thing, this game is randomly extremely funny. All of them are, actually. Every single NPC has their own personality profile on the left screen, and while they'll usually just be some mundane comment about her job or hobbies, sometimes they're just completely off the wall. A selection of Style Savvy 1 character profiles. She spends most of her money on hair gel. She thinks her trust fund will never run out. She wants to make gold, so she's learning alchemy. Her pet ferret chews holes in all of her clothes. Little details like that are just so charming and I think add a lot of flavor. This game establishes an extremely funny running gag wherein the character creator is presented as a person describing what you look like to a person who has never met you before in ludicrously meticulous detail, usually followed by that person recognizing you on sight later on. It's little touches like that that really make it for me. The character interactions are also just top-notch, and while there is a lot of repeating dialogue that you'll notice more and more over time as you play, it creates a lot of really funny moments in a kind of subtle, understated sort of way. Like this girl who shows up during the tutorial talking about how you both have such amazing fashion sense while she's looking like she just got hit with a random texture generator, or the way that every single person who you dress up in a satisfactory manner acts like you are the god of fashion in the flesh. Plus, every single word that comes out of Renee's mouth, I love her. Also, I need to talk about how good the soundtrack in this game is. It's so unique. I'm not sure I've ever heard a video game soundtrack quite like it. This game's OST distinguishes itself by the majority of these tracks having these strange, inscrutable vocals, which really captures the way you kind of half hear the music in the background while you're shopping at a mall. I believe the majority of these vocals are from sample CDs. I was led to this conclusion after seeing somebody point out an overlap between the song that plays in the Buyer Center and a track from a Strawberry Shortcake movie. Honestly, if anything, this soundtrack reminds me the most of Persona 3. There are 9 tracks to choose from to play in your boutique, and I find a lot of these extremely appealing. My personal favorite is option 2. This particular track, instead of using sample CD vocals, uses a Vocaloid called Mako, which gives the song a really unique sound and vibe. Occasionally I'll find myself singing the vocal loop from this song, despite the fact that it, doesn't have words. Some of the music loops, especially the screamier ones, can get a bit obnoxious when played for long stretches at a time, but that doesn't stop me from thinking the soundtrack to this game is exceptionally interesting. Now on sale, now that's what I call style savvy. Featuring all your favorite tunes from the hit game, like Me Hit Through Her, Reach Out, and Howie D. One drawback of this game is if precisely matching color coordination is important to you, you're going to have a hard time. Just take a look at this example outfit that Grace models for you at the beginning of the game. The shades of color all coordinate. Then what's going on down there exactly? But yeah, the item colors in this game weren't made with a ton of regard for precise matches, and as far as the game is concerned, any color that falls within the same hue family is the same color, so you're going to have to get acclimated to some clashing. You may run into some confusion regarding the terminology of certain clothing items. For example, a character might come in asking for a shirt, and while you might be led to believe that this refers to any long-sleeve top, in this game a shirt exclusively refers to button-ups. There's a couple instances of ambiguous terminology, like some seemingly arbitrary distinctions between what is considered a camisole and a tank top, some non-obvious peculiarities between what is considered a casual and formal dress, and a rigid, non-overlapping separate classification of headpieces and accessories. That's why it's important to use the search feature whenever you have any doubt, because you could end up giving somebody the wrong item by accident. There are also some limitations around the silhouette due to the 3D nature of this game, which is a problem that all of these games have, but I think in this game it's probably the most severe. For example, the skirts always have their waistband at the hip, even though for a lot of these items, the Lolita skirts and dresses in particular, the silhouette would make much more sense if the skirt met at the waist. This is presumably so the jacket items don't conflict with the skirts. In this game, if there's any shape conflict with the top and bottom layer, whichever item was equipped first will just despawn. All of the games in the Style Savvy series have online elements, which I unfortunately will not be able to factor into my review since the online game connection capabilities of the DS and 3DS have been retired. According to the Style Savvy wiki, this game had the following features: flyer mode, which allowed the player to distribute and collect flyers from other people's boutiques, wireless contest, which allowed you to participate in a fashion contest with other players instead of NPCs, and the wireless shop, which allowed you to buy items for other players' stores and vice versa. This game also establishes another pattern that would appear in later entries, which are the DLC clothing brands that correspond to actual real-life designers. In this game, those brands are Darion, short for House of Darion, a fashion line owned by Beyoncé that operated from 2005 to 2012, and Charlotte Ronson, a line designed by the fashion designer of the same name, based on real-world designs from the fall of 2009. This game is both the most simple and the most accessible, as it's easily able to be emulated not just on computers but also on mobile. I highly recommend doing that if you enjoy dress-up games because I think this game is just so cute and fun. It's an excellent start to the series, and well beyond my somewhat strict threshold for old game jankiness. Perhaps the series hadn't quite found its footing yet, but it's still a great experience, and frankly, I'll miss those crunchy pixels. The second in the series, Style Savvy Trendsetters, released in the fall of 2012. Of the series, it's kind of the most redundant. In a lot of ways, it's just the original game but adapted for 3DS. However, the art style is different. There's some new features like the addition of bags as an item category, a photo studio to take pictures of your player character, there's a few new brands and altered names for the existing ones, and most significantly, it introduces the option to dress up men. This time you start out as a customer of the boutique Mira Luna, owned by Michaela, who's more or less an interchangeable character from the original game's Grace. She notices your keen fashion sense, which seems to contradict with the actual starter outfit that they give you, and she quickly offers you a job, and the next day you start as an employee. Your coworker at the start of this game is a girl named Emmy Lou, who quits her job shortly after you start working there in order to further her career as a stylist. This means going forward, Emmy Lou will be your rival, in stark contrast to the girl failure coattail riding Renee. And character creator presented by somebody describing your face in ludicrous detail number 2! Once you become an employee, your talent is quickly noticed by both the customers and the owner, leading you to be promoted. However, in this game, Michaela decides to step down as the manager of Mira Luna, leaving you as the manager less than 1 week after starting the job. As in the original, you're able to name and customize the boutique after this decision is made. To fill in the void left by Emmy Lou, occasionally a character will come in asking for a job, and you'll be able to add them to your roster of assistants. Each one of them comes with a different perk, like Danny, who will occasionally stock up on items, or Deirdre, who will sometimes make sales. This game has a non-real-time day and night system. Time will pass after you do any activity, like helping a customer, visiting the buyer center, or having an excursion with an NPC. After a day passes, the happiness jar, this little thing on the bottom screen, empties out. Whenever it's filled up, it causes a full moon, which allows the game to progress. Some things that can happen during a happiness level up include unlocking new brands at the buyer center, expanding your store's inventory, and unlocking special items. This game took the loosey-goosey style categories that you rarely ever needed to use in the original game and turned them into a more heavily codified system that becomes the most key aspect of dress-up gameplay in all games going forward. These are called tastes in Trendsetters, images in Fashion Forward and Styling Star, and styles if you're a human being. Since this is a common feature in all of the 3DS games with minimal variation, I'll describe them in a way that covers all three games. First, there's the basic category, which mostly consists of filler items for when you don't have enough items of a different style to make a complete outfit. I'm not 100% sure of this, but I believe that every other style category request tolerates some inclusion of basic items. However, you will occasionally get people coming in asking for basic outfits, at which you will grumble because the items are so cheap that an entire outfit will only net you about 60 bucks. Then there's the girly category, which describes cute and youthful styles with a lot of frills, lace, skirts, dresses, and knits. For some reason, I associate this category with early career Taylor Swift. As I was playing, I was like, ugh, girly outfits again, this one's lame, before sadly realizing that this accounts for the majority of my real-life closet. A category with substantial overlap to that one is feminine, which caters to more mature, business-like sensibilities. These are usually the most expensive and therefore most high-yield items, second only to the luxury category, later known as chic, which are the high-end designer items that break the bank for you and your customers alike. These items also tend to be hilariously tacky. Then there's pop, also known as lively, also known as eye strain. These are eye-blastingly colorful clothes that lean towards being casual and sporty, as well as relatively inexpensive. It's partway to Decora minus the accessories. Man, can you imagine if these games had Decora accessories? Next, my personal favorite, bold! This is a daring, glitzy style featuring a lot of denim, leather, faux fur, and sequins. And camisoles. So many camisoles. The bold style is influenced by certain subtypes of the Gyaro fashion style. Can you imagine if this game had Gyaro makeup? Then there's edgy, later known as rock, which also has a lot of denim and leather but trends towards studs and plaid for a punk rock aesthetic. Opposite to that, save for its proclivity for plaid, is the preppy style, which is all very boarding school. Then there's two related ones, princess, also known as baby doll, and gothic. These are sweet Lolita and gothic Lolita respectively, featuring a lot of wide skirts that magically float in the air without the assistance of a petticoat, as well as lots of bows, lace, and corsets. The latter type also includes some non-Lolita gothic styles. Next is Eastern, which includes modern style clothes with motifs from East and Central Asia, as well as traditional garments like kimono and cheongsam. Then there's boho chic, which I don't understand why they couldn't have just called boho, especially in later games where there's already a category called chic. Anyways, this is hippie stuff and clothes with questionable Native American motifs. Next is retro, later known as psychedelic, which is basically like if the brands Daisies and Capsule from Style Savvy 1 hopped into a blender together. It's very colorful and also slightly hippie-ish, with the vintage-inspired clothes tending to be inspired by trends from the 60s to the 80s. Then there's sporty, which is athletic wear and not the kind that is particularly interesting to play dress up with. This style ends up getting cut in the fourth game. Available in Trendsetters only is Flirty, which seemed to be a girlier supplement to the bold style type, so the options are basically the precise halfway point between the girly and bold styles. I love this one and am sad that it didn't carry over. Some of the items from this category get repurposed into the bold or girly categories later on, but many of them also do not, which I think is too bad. It's important to memorize the distinctions between these categories as you play. As time goes on, you will be expected to identify these styles by sight alone. While these new style types more or less correspond to a single brand each, there is some overlap. For example, the bold style is most characteristic of Azusa, but there's also a decent amount of bold items from the punk brand Stage Dive. The feminine style, best represented by Kentaro Moto, also has a decent amount of representation in the luxury brand Zaid, and so on. This hat is determined to leave my head, so I'm gonna just give it what it wants. Unlike in the first game where all of the brands are unlocked from the start, in this game you'll need to unlock them one by one. A few of the brands remain the same from the original game, but the majority have been given new names. The brands in this game are Zaid for chic, Harlow Heights for preppy, Kanokoi for eastern, Marzipan Sky for girly, Kintado Moto for feminine, Mint Sprinkles for pop, Pop Quiz for retro, Soy Milk for boho chic, Stage Dive for edgy, Raven Candle for gothic, Marble Lily for princess, Azusa for bold, Le Spark for flirty, Uber Cloth for basic, and Zipline for sporty. The last brand, which does not fall into a specific style type, is Teatro Amare, which sells these super expensive cosplay items just like Style Savvy One's Masquerade. Also, like the first game, you can win these items by winning fashion contests. There's also a few brands that sell only bags, Cantata Tasca and Strava, representing feminine and chic. As such, the clothing brands for these styles sell no bags. Later on in the game, 4 men's brands will be unlocked. Uber Cloth, like the women's brand, sells basics. Aerionef sells more contemporary items that come off as very hipster in retrospect. Department 9 is essentially the men's equivalent of Azusa, and Castellan sells the high-end stuff. They're all more or less completely forgettable, besides some particularly flamboyant items from Department 9. Like the first game, the Buyer Center features different brands depending on the day, but if you'd like to restock on a specific brand that's closed, you can just push the time forward until they're open again, instead of having to wait until the next day in real life. This game introduces the deeply annoying skirt deflation feature. While it is an improvement over Style Savvy One's refusal to layer conflicting items, it's pretty easy to ruin a look that uses a wide skirt because as soon as you equip an outerwear item that would overlap with it, the skirt automatically turns into an A-line cut. This would continue to be a problem for the remainder of the series. This game has even goofier customer profiles than the original. Trendsetters customer profile highlights. She's given 3 years of her life to reading the fine print. Her backseat driving drives everyone in the front seat crazy. Her parents make her practice her banjo picking outside. Her obsession with her new car is starting to worry her friends. She became a vegetarian on a dare. She hates vegetables. And finally, her hobbies are weird and strange to everyone but her. This game features some cameos from the original game, including Grace, Renee, and an absolutely unrecognizable Dominic showing up in your boutique.
Why are you white?
Seriously, he's so pale that you can barely discern his facial features. Rococo also shows up in the fashion magazine. This game gives her a son, Rocco, who can occasionally be found in the downtown area. I believe in the original Japanese version, he's not her son, but rather a more normal-looking variant of Pario. And how come absolute randos get to send you flirty texts in this game, and nothing of the sort for Dominic? I mean, original Dominic, not Casper the Friendly Ghost. This is madness. Get this man off my phone. After she leaves the boutique, Emilu's storyline progresses in the background, which you hear secondhand from Michaela and other customers in your shop. She left town to start working her way up in the fashion contests, possibly implying that she moved to the city from the first game. Eventually, you get word that she's taking home trophies at the elite contests, and around that same time, a fashion contest venue opens up in your own town. After this feature unlocks, your main objective is to start climbing the ranks. This feature is more or less identical to the one used in the original Style Savvy. You get a preset selection of items and have to arrange them according to a style theme. Once you've beaten your first elite contests, you're finally in league with Emilu, and after you've beaten all the elite contests, you unlock the international contests. And these are bullshit! Look at the outfit Emilu sent out. And then mine. She got second, and I got third! Are you kidding me? The international contests are wildly finicky. Picking out an outfit in the international contest doesn't just boil down to putting together a coherent outfit where every item matches the theme. It strongly favors matching colors and patterns, so the way to win these ones is to sort by whichever style, color, and pattern options account for the most available items, and do not choose any items that deviate from the 3 that you've picked. When I tried again with what I believe was a far weaker outfit, I was able to actually win. Screw you, Emilu. Overhyped little twerp. It's not really her fault, but I just didn't like Emilu as much as Renee. I suppose I prefer my supporting characters to be clueless and arrogant as opposed to competent and boring. We don't even get to see her that much, so my main impression of her throughout the majority of the game was the girl who openly complained any time she had to wear alternative fashion, which did not set me off on the right foot as far as my perception of her. Once you beat the game, you can change your appearance via the title screen, a feature that would persist through the rest of the series. While far from a bad game, I would say that Trendsetters is probably the weakest out of the series as far as dress-up gameplay. The customization is just so-so. In my opinion, it's an aesthetic downgrade from the first game, and the style options are relatively underwhelming. The original Style Savvy may have had a more limited amount of clothing items, but there's just something about the items that were in that game that appeal to me far more than the ones in this. It's far from a bad game though, and I still recommend it, even if not as strongly as the others. This game has a stock limit of 1,000 women's items and 500 men's items, which is still pretty small, but I would say at this point the stock capacity and the total amount of items still feel relatively balanced. If you're selling enough items between stock ups, you won't find yourself running into that limit too often. I also didn't care for being forced to carry men's fashion. I don't hate men's fashion being an option in these types of games, but I do strongly prefer being able to opt out. I mean, real-life boutiques aren't forced to cater to both masculine and feminine fashion, so why should it be in a game? Even if you stubbornly refuse to stock men's items, they'll just still keep coming in, taking up space in your shop. Plus, the men's fashion in this game is an absolute drag. It's no fun, there's no alternative styles like they have for the women's options. There's not just one, but two brands that cater to Lolita fashion, but there's no option for OG, the masculine equivalent of that style. All of the style-savvy games have the option to look at the outfit up close after you've finished, but I like the version of it in this game the most. And that's because I never intentionally use this feature, but sometimes I'm just aimlessly mashing on the screen and it pops up this shadow figure that makes me feel like I've accidentally stumbled into a creepypasta. The DLC brands in this game are 2 Animal Crossing tie-ins, a line of Gracie Grace-inspired items in a KK Slider t-shirt, and Liz Lisa, which at the time of this game's release specialized in Hime Gyaro clothing. The set the DLC gives you in this game resembles a preppy school uniform. Overall, I would say that this game is a quality follow-up to the first, and while it might not have blown me away, you can still get many hours of enjoyment out of this game. The third game in the series, Style Savvy Fashion Forward from the spring of 2015, decides to shake up the formula established in the first 2 games by introducing a pretty strange narrative setup. This game begins with you opening a letter from your grandma, having been given instructions to wait until the date of the real-life first time you're opening the game. It's left intentionally vague what happened to your grandmother. Maybe she moved away or maybe she died, but either way, she left you this key and instructions to open up the little door in your childhood dollhouse. Once you open the door, a tiny human named Sophie walks out, marveling at the immense size of your stuff compared to her. She mistakes you for your grandmother at first, and it's revealed that she, too, is the granddaughter of the doll person that your grandma used to play with. She invites you to go through the door and into her world, and you're shrunk down to her size and go inside, entering a place called Beaumont City. This is an ideal game for doll enthusiasts because it's literally about going into your dollhouse and playing around in Fashion Doll World. The dream. Unfortunately, you create your character once you're shrunk down into the doll world, which is sad because I'd have loved it if the person describing your face running gag was present in every game. So my question is, does this game count as an isekai? I'm kind of leaning towards that it is. In case you don't know, isekai is an anime genre wherein the protagonist is transported to another world. If you ever see a title like, "Uh-oh, forced to live as a slime mold in a fantasy BDSM dungeon," that's isekai. While the conceit of isekai usually involves the character being unable to return to their original world or having to go through some ordeal to return, that's not necessarily a staple of the genre. And it seems that the setup here is that you're able to enter and leave whenever you want, but once you go through that door in the beginning of the game, you never see the real world that you came from ever again. Maybe the implication is that you, the player's real life, is the real world you return to every time you shut your 3DS, but I kind of like to think that your player character just wandered into a dollhouse fashion wonderland one day and never returned to the real world ever again. It's relatable. So it turns out that Sophie owns a struggling boutique in this city, and once you demonstrate aptitude for matching the right items to her customers' tastes, she decides to make you the new manager. Frequently seen alongside Sophie is her best friend Callie, a local celebrity and enthusiast of the bold style. These two are the game's most prominent NPCs and will follow you as you make progress through the game. The way this world looks is substantially more stylized and cutesy compared to the first 2 games, which thematically makes a lot of sense because you're in Doll World. Appropriately, the buildings and decor in Beaumont City are very colorful, simple, and cutesy. I've heard some players say that they resonated with this game less when they were kids compared to the other style-savvy titles, just because it was so much more overtly girly in its style and presentation. And I get it. Sometimes when you're a little girl, playing a dress-up game on its own is already just on the verge of sickeningly girly, and that's without the adorably saccharine environments and UI design. But I'm still glad they did it. You can't just copy and paste the same game 4 times in a row. While they haven't added any new item type categories in this game, there's a major expansion of the glasses category, which has been renamed glasses/earrings/etc. This means that earrings are a customization option now, except that you're not allowed to wear glasses and earrings at the same time. The style categories carry over from Trendsetters with some slight renaming, minus the flirty category. Many brand names also carry over, except the feminine brand is now called Corral, with its corresponding bag brand now called Corral Prelude. The chic brand is now Enid Chen with a bag brand called Ariana. The lively brand has reverted back to April Bonbon. The boho brand is now Soy. The psychedelic brand is now called Retrobeat. The preppy brand is now called Brook Bridge, and the sporty brand is now called Street Flow. The wholesale shopping center is also renamed from the Buyer Center to the Exhibition Hall. I'd just like to point out that the music for the brand Marzipan Sky sounds like you got a just okay placement in Mario Kart. I'm not a big fan of the real-time clock used in this game, and this is mostly because I tend to play games around the same time every day, which is usually 9 p.m. or later, and in some cases much later. And playing late at night results in your flow of customers grinding to nearly a halt. Not just that, but it also punishes you for time traveling using the system clock, because screw me for living in a part of the world that has daylight savings where the system clock needs to be adjusted twice per year. Because of that, I wasn't able to organically see as much of this game compared to the rest of the series in the same amount of time. A major gameplay element added in Fashion Forward is this interior design feature, represented by you placing pieces in a dollhouse, which then magically correspond to furniture items in an actual room. That's right, a dollhouse within a dollhouse. To be honest, I find this feature extremely weak, and I am a person who enjoys a little bit of interior design gameplay. It tolerates zero item overlap, even between things like floor items and wall items, which makes the level of customizability pretty severely limited. Fortunately, this feature is inessential to the gameplay and can be pretty much entirely skipped over after you complete the tutorial. However, the game does incentivize you to fill out all the rooms because you can invite the characters to the rooms and collect rent from them, making this the only style-savvy game that allows you to be a landlord as a side hustle. There's also the photo studio. At first, you can only take photos of yourself and one other NPC for a small fee like you could in Trendsetters, but after you progress enough in the game, you'll find the photographer and photo studio manager agonizing about the fact that they need to find somebody to model a lively outfit. And if you show up to the studio wearing that style, they'll invite you to model for them. This unlocks modeling jobs. These work a lot like the regular boutique style challenges, just with your own player character. There are a bunch of little ways to make money in this game besides doing the dress-up gameplay loop in your boutique. You'll get a little stipend after you help out at the hair salon or makeup studio. There's the previously mentioned modeling jobs and rent collection, but most compelling to me is the design commission feature. This game introduces a fashion design feature which is just a little less in-depth than the pro designs found in the Animal Crossing games. In this, you can select an item, choose the colors and patterns on that item, and you can optionally stamp it with an emblem, using a drawing tool that is basically identical to Animal Crossing. However, this game only allows you to make a single emblem that is overwritten every time you make a new one, which I find deeply lame. After you complete the third fashion show, you can unlock the Designer Lounge. Here you can find the brand representatives from the exhibition hall looking for designers to make new items for their brand. They'll give you a task and a specific amount of days to complete it, and once you finish your commission, you'll get a small designer's fee and a stock of 10 items that you're able to sell in your store. It's a very cute feature, although I do kind of wish they didn't save it for so late in the game. Men's dress-up still exists in this game, although just barely. Instead of having to stock up on the clothes yourself, you'll unlock all men's items and the option to dress up the male NPCs as soon as you beat the game. It's de-emphasized so much in this game compared to Trendsetters that it's easy enough to miss this feature entirely. This game puts a lot more focus on getting out and interacting with the world, and while this is cute, I think it can be a little much at times. It usually feels a little aimless. There aren't all that many running storylines, so mostly you're just hearing these NPCs ramble about their lives in a way that feels very interchangeable. Fashion Forward customer profile highlights. Keeps piranhas and goldfish in separate tanks. Her daily routine includes eating anchovies. Takes things apart to see them work. Then they don't. Surprisingly well informed about yeast. After you make enough progress, one of your customers will ask you to join them for an outing outside Beaumont City, which unlocks the station. There are 6 total station destinations: Bun Bun Funland, a theme park; Bougainville, a large metropolitan city; Maple Crescent, a historic site with traditional Japanese architecture; Tropica Beach, a tropical destination where it feels like summer all year round; The Meadows, a botanical garden and location of Callie's parents' mansion; and a fancy restaurant. Even though there's not much to do in these places besides a side quest that I'll discuss later, I think all of these places are really cute, and I think this little travel mechanic was a worthy addition to the game. While this game does have a selection of DLC exclusive clothes, unlike in previous games, the only real-life brand tie-in is, confusingly, 7-Eleven. There's also a few holiday-themed item sets and a couple of yukatas inspired by Princess Peach and Rosalina. This is also the first game to feature amiibo compatibility. In this game, when you scan a valid amiibo, a customer will appear in your store based on your system Mii, or in this case, a creepy blank-looking person because Citra doesn't use Mii data. These characters come in wearing an item based on your scanned character. For example, if you scan Kirby, they'll be wearing a Kirby bag, or if you scan Isabelle, they'll come in wearing her green sweater vest. If you successfully style an outfit for them, keeping in mind that you need to hit try it on and not take a look, you'll receive a copy of that special item for yourself. These are sometimes stocked in Purple Moon after the fact as well. This game is the first in the series to not feature fashion contests. Instead, the equivalent in this game are fashion shows, where you get similarly dressed up to represent a specific theme, except that you have to use stock from your boutique instead of a preset selection. Also, the element of competition is removed. The first 3 fashion shows are different from the rest. You're first instructed to do a girly look, and then a bold look, and then player's choice. After this, you can select a theme manually. They don't make it extremely obvious which styles are associated with each of these choose-your-own themes, so I'd recommend cross-referencing these with a list on the Beaumont Arena page on the Style Savvy Wiki so you don't waste your time. You have to spend a decent amount of time selling tickets to customers in your boutique before you're able to do one of these fashion shows, so it's best to come in prepared. While you had to do a whole series of fashion contests in the previous games to reach the end credits, Fashion Forward hits you with a credit sequence at just 3 fashion shows in, which feels jarringly short. This game seems to take about as long to reach the credits as the original Style Savvy, which feels odd because of how many new features this game has. The placement of the credits is actually a bit misleading, because you haven't unlocked every feature by the time you hit that point. The custom designs, the bags only brands in Purple Moon, and several unique storylines are still left to be unlocked by the time that you're done with the 3rd fashion show. Even though there's still plenty that can be done after the credits roll, I honestly felt pretty done with this game by the time I reached that point. Although I would say that the dress-up gameplay is superior in Fashion Forward compared to the version in Trendsetters, I was least motivated to continue playing this game out of the entire rest of the series. This is entirely the fault of 2 elements of this game that I believe causes Fashion Forward to be the weakest out of the Style Savvy series. The first issue is the stock limit. This game gives you a fixed stock limit of 1,000 items, and with this game's fairly massive catalog of clothes, this becomes way more of a problem than the 1,000 item limit in Trendsetters, or even the 500 item limit in the first game. After getting through about half of the core gameplay, you'll find yourself constantly running out of stock space, which clashes with the fact that you're incentivized to buy as many items as you can to fill out your own wardrobe. Instead, by necessity, you have to focus most of your buying on staple items, which you know that you use all the time, and only one of everything else. And even this strategy tends to backfire, because customers will refuse to purchase the same item twice unless they're bundled with a full outfit, and you really can't keep track of what you've already sold with this game's gigantic cast of NPCs. The no repeats mechanic was introduced in Trendsetters and continues on for the rest of the series, but it's much more disruptive in this game because of the limited stock. My second major gripe is the color palette mechanic. After you've made a decent amount of progress, you can meet this character Rainbow in the park. Rainbow asks you to show her photos of locations around the in-game world, and if you show her the right photo, you'll unlock a color that you can use in the hair salon, makeup studio, and fashion design tool. Sounds cute, right? An inoffensive little side quest that encourages you to explore the world? Wrong! This aspect of the game sucks record-breaking levels of ass, and here is why. First, the color palette options that you're given at the beginning of the game are truly stifling. These are supposed to be makeup colors, and you start the game with 2 pinks. 2 pinks! And frankly, they both kind of suck as makeup. You're given so little to work with that it makes you want to avoid using the makeup and hairstyling features entirely until you've completed a lot of these color palette quests. Second, tying into the real-time clock aspect that I've already complained about, to unlock certain colors in this game, you don't just need to be at the right location, but also at the right time of day, and the right season, meaning you need to play this game for an entire calendar year to completely unlock your color palette. That is madness. My tolerance for these games compelling you to play across several real-life seasons begins and ends at the seasonal fashion items, and any more than that is just a bridge too far. Those 2 things are the worst about the color palette mechanic, but the whole way you interact with this feature is way clunkier than it needs to be. For every photo you have to show Rainbow, you have to be like, hey, I want to show you a photo. And one at a time, you show the pictures to her, and she goes, oh, I found nothing. The way she wastes your time and won't even immediately tell you if the photo is right is just insulting, and for me ended up building a lot of resentment towards this character. I would be a lot more forgiving of this mechanic if the color palette was used for the custom designs only, because that at least feels very peripheral to the core gameplay. And I wouldn't feel nearly as sour about not being able to unlock the colors in a timely manner. But the fact is, you are compelled to do makeup and hairstyles multiple times throughout the main plot, and those features plus the color palette just truly sucks. The color palette mechanic combined with the makeup options makes for some truly awful makeup customization, because a lot of these shades are just ugly or nonsensical when used as makeup. Like, explain to me why there are more blues available for blush than there are pinks. And these pinks, man, they'll have you yearning for a way to make the applied makeup more sheer, because they're overpowering to the point of looking clownish. There are also a lot of smaller gripes that I have that are unique to this game. After you complete a fashion show, you'll get a never-ending flood of customers coming into your store asking for outfits in the style that you modeled. And while making full outfits over and over is great news for your shop funds, the repetition gets boring pretty quickly. This game managed to achieve something that I didn't think was possible, making me get bored of styling bold outfits. Related to that, I really preferred being able to enter a competition any day I wanted to. Having to sell items to 30-ish people before I sold enough tickets to be able to host another fashion show started to feel like a bit of a drag. I know it's probably to limit that aforementioned outfit rush that you get every time you complete a fashion show, so I feel like removing both of those would be a net positive. This game lacks a quantified sense of progression. There's no boutique ranking or level up, you just kind of keep doing things until more stuff happens, and I don't think this makes for a gameplay loop that compels you to keep going. You can easily miss entire features because the game barely drops hints that they even exist, and their unlock conditions can tend to be kind of specific. And I know this is probably my own fault, but I just didn't like my player character's face. Like, I could have just restarted the character creator after making her, but the fact that you can't see what you're making as you're selecting the options means you could end up with something that you don't like without even being fully aware of it. And like the two games that came before, there's no changing your player character after this customization is completed. The mouth in particular just looks weird, especially when it's open. This wasn't an issue I had in any of the other games. And this is definitely not the game's fault because I had no stability issues when playing on the actual 3DS, but this game gave me no end of trouble on the emulator. Specifically, when I was using the bold shop interior, it would crash like 1 of every 8 try-it-ons, so I found myself obsessively quick-saving between pretty much every individual action, and also I had no idea that these crashes were related to using the bold interior, so I had to deal with this for a huge majority of my playthrough. Not just that, but it also crashed with seemingly no rhyme or reason after I had just spent a good chunk of time gathering photos for Rainbow's god-awful color palette mechanic, which was just the cherry on top of my delicious fuck you sundae. While I definitely wouldn't say that the issues in this game are problematic enough that you'd be better off skipping this title, this game is a bit more of a mixed bag compared to the others. Even though I do have plenty to complain about, this game also has a lot of features that none of the other games do. I particularly like the ability to travel to different areas in the world through this station. This is exactly the kind of pointless just because gameplay that I adore. The only real thing to accomplish in these places is to take photos for that goddamn color palette mechanic, but these locations are easily the best thing about having to do that. This world is so cute, and getting to go out and explore it makes it feel so much more lively and fleshed out. Without a doubt, I think this one has the best setting of any of the style-savvy games. While you can't get up and walk around with your player character at any point in any of these games, this is the game that makes it feel the most like you can. Along with all the little extra side jobs, the unique locations, and the excellent dress-up, there are plenty of positives to balance out my issues with Fashion Forward, although, for me, I think the drawbacks slightly outweigh the benefits. The final proper entry in this series as of now is Style Savvy Styling Star, released in November 2017 during the end of the 3DS era. Okay, so the first thing I noticed when I loaded up this game is that the music is hitting! Like from second 0, hitting!
Are you ready? Don't you be afraid now. Welcome to the new stage.
They said, yeah, we're gonna make a music-themed dress-up game, so this game needs to have one of the best soundtracks of all time, and then those maniacs went ahead and did it. If this OP music came on at the club, you wouldn't hear me complaining. Like, I'm not even kidding. I immediately started having trouble making progress in this game because the music is so ridiculously good that I just wanted to set it down and let it play in the background, including on the goddamn title screen. Once again wastes no time in giving you your own boutique. You roll into this city, which you name, and very shortly after, your uncle tells you that he's sick of working at the boutique he owns and hands you the keys right then and there. This seems like it's for the best because a lot of your customers are like, yeah, that guy kinda sucked. It's a good thing you're working here now. And character creator presented by somebody describing your face in ludicrous detail number 3! So Sin Sophia got to the 4th game in their series and said to themselves, well, let's just not fix what isn't broken. And so a huge majority of clothes from Fashion Forward are also present in Styling Star. Also carrying over are certain UI elements, as well as every brand and style type except for Street Flow and the Sporty category. However, Styling Star fixes pretty much every issue I had with Fashion Forward, actually not just for that, but for the entire rest of the series. First, we're back to the in-game day progression system used in Trendsetters, which I way prefer to Fashion Forward's real-time clock. And unlike Trendsetters, this game also uses in-game seasons, allowing you to complete your collection much more quickly. I was extremely pleased with the amount of quality of life improvements in this game. There's a skip button for the dialogue, there's a check stock option when a customer is giving a request, as well as an option to have them wait while you go pick up what they need at the exhibition hall. The exhibition hall shopping menu is extremely streamlined. You can order any item that you've previously purchased from your cell phone, and there's a massive increase in your stock capacity from 1,000 to a whopping 20,000. You are not going to be hitting that item limit anytime soon. This game introduces several new item categories, not just separating earrings and glasses into separately equipable categories, but also adding bracelets and headphones as separate categories as well. And that, plus having the largest amount of available items out of the entire series, gives Styling Star the most customizable dress-up gameplay by a wide margin. Somehow, I managed to finish the entire game without realizing that you can customize the position of most of the hair bows. That would have been useful. I find that this game strikes a balance in the character models between the ones used in Trendsetters and Fashion Forward and the ones used in Style Savvy 1. The characters are more flat and cel-shaded, which I think is a more appealing choice compared to the semi-realistic shading style. It's just a good happy medium. Like Fashion Forward, this game is heavily centered around interacting with the NPCs and world around you, but I think this game accomplishes that much more effectively. The characters have such vivid personalities, and instead of feeling like I'm just interacting with them for no particular reason besides the 2 or 3 main characters, the character interactions here feel very purposeful. In fact, this game is story-driven in a way that none of the previous entries are, to the point that it's practically a visual novel. Even the non-unique customers with their recycled dialogues felt so vivid and full of personality. Sometimes they'll just start dumping information about their lives to you that have very little to do with the reason they're out shopping. I would say the non-unique character interactions feel very grounded, where in the other games they feel a bit more cartoonish. The same cannot be said of the unique characters, which you follow through a veritable 3-season slice-of-life idol anime. And I thank Sin Sophia for that sincerely. You follow the unique characters through various interconnecting storylines, the most prominent of which are about 3 aspiring idols. Skip to
1 hour, 1 minute, 55 seconds.
If you wouldn't like to be spoiled for this game's storyline, as this is the only one where spoilers could potentially be a detriment to the experience. First, you meet Rosie, a clumsy, adorable country bumpkin with big dreams of becoming a star. Then there's Yolanda, a wealthy heiress who aspires to be a singer against her mother's wishes. Finally, there's Alina, a geeky Mewtuber, who gets scouted after a talent agency sees her perform on stream, and who tries to keep her status as a public figure a secret. Rosie's storyline, which begins first, mostly centers around her close friendship with her best friend Camilla. When she first moves into your city, she's a bit down on her luck and is only able to request very inexpensive outfits and items. Once she passes an audition to be signed on at this city's talent agency, named Nintendo, as in rhymes with Nintendo, she gets frustrated by her piddling pre-debut income and takes a job at a local flower shop, which she keeps even as she becomes a world-famous pop idol. Eventually you meet Camilla, a fabulously wealthy girl with a proclivity for Lolita fashion and for being cold and snippy. The two seem like an odd pair because of their clashing backgrounds and personalities, but they're close due to their shared history. Right now, I would just like to emphasize that you can skip to
1 hour, 1 minute, 55 seconds.
if you would not like to be spoiled for the plot of Style Savvy Styling Star. Okay, for the rest of you, drumroll please. We've got subtext. This game teases a handful of relationships between the main and side characters, but none of them do it quite like Rosie and Camilla. And because I always get comments like, ugh, shippers ruin everything, why can't they just be friends? 1, I like romance narratives, so sue me. And 2, friendship and romance are, more often than not, functionally indistinguishable at first. So maybe they ended up together, or maybe they just had a weirdly, emotionally intense and fraught friendship that will haunt them both for the rest of their lives. The romantic subtext with these two is actually pretty heavy-handed. First of all, the plot of this video game is very anime and borrows a lot of anime tropes, and Rosie and Camilla are a textbook tsundere love story. If you're not familiar with that term, tsundere refers to a character who downplays their adoration for somebody else by acting cold, distant, or stuck up. This trope can be used platonically, but it's much more common in romance narratives. Camilla quite literally does the "it's not like I care about her or anything" spiel multiple times. It is not subtle. As Rosie's narrative progresses, Camilla finds herself in the role of her #1 fan, which she treats with the same stern seriousness as she treats everything else. She vacillates between these over-the-top gestures of affection, like buying Rosie a completely excessive amount of cakes, and pushing her away and avoiding her because she feels unworthy of her presence. The climax of their story involves Camilla unilaterally deciding that Rosie needs to focus on building her network among other famous people and starts avoiding her, making Rosie feel lonely and concerned. During this time, Rosie asks you to bring Camilla tickets for the most important performance of her career thus far, and you deliver them despite her telling you that she has no intention to go. But of course, on the night of the performance, there she is anyway. After a little opportunity to dress her up for an impending cutscene, Rosie calls Camilla up on stage, where they have a tearful reunion. Rosie impulsively decides that Camilla will be performing with her, and she accepts, and Camilla knows the song and choreography perfectly, because of course she does. This pairing took a while to grow on me because admittedly at the beginning I was not rooting for them. And that's because I started this game out thinking that Rosie is an adorable sweetie pie who deserves the world, and that Camilla kind of sucks. Despite the fact that I'm usually hunting out Yuri in places where none can be found, I'm still kind of sour that I couldn't find a way to argue that there was romantic subtext between Sue and Leah in the Avatar Star Sue webisodes. This totally overt, in-your-face, closest without actually being canon romantic subtext between Rosie and Camilla was just not hitting for me for most of the first half of the game. I think partially that's because I actually have a player character in this one, and I always enjoy Harvest Moon adjacent dating mechanics. So whenever these two are on screen, I just look at Rosie and my brain starts playing that one Shawn Mendes song like, "I know I can treat you better." Maybe it's just my distaste for characters who are on the more unfriendly and insulting end of the tsundere spectrum, which Camilla firmly occupies without adjusting the scale to accommodate games that aren't made to be enjoyed by 7-year-olds. Camilla is supportive of Rosie in her own strange way, which occasionally involves disparaging her to test her confidence, or bossing her around, as she is wont to do to everybody, or intentionally distancing herself from Rosie after she became famous because she believed that she was no longer worthy of her friendship. Camilla's a bit of an acquired taste, that's for sure. However, I did grow to appreciate this pairing. Their dynamic comes off as slightly one-sided on Camilla's side. Her feelings towards Rosie drive her to act irrationally, self-sabotage, and obsessively downplay her feelings. And I suppose I ended up being reminded of a certain demonic hair salon and started rooting for them despite myself. For some reason, I have a severely hard time retaining Camilla's name, because for a long time I had thought she was called Camellia, like the flower. And I had this whole spiel written about flower language and symbolism and how their respective flowers correspond to each other's signature colors, and I had to throw that whole thing in the trash because that is not her name. Camilla means like acolyte. I can't work with this. Anyways, I'm still held back from wholeheartedly liking Camilla because I get the feeling she would treat her housekeeping staff poorly. All of these main idol characters have a signature color, 2 signature styles, and a notable character quirk. Rosie's signature color is pink, her styles are girly and rock, and her quirk is that she's constantly falling over. Then there's Yolanda's storyline. You first meet Yolanda as she's sneaking out, pursued by her bodyguard Fortman. She is an only child and heiress of the Celestial Hotel, owned by her overbearing single mother, Margot. Margot wants her to be single-mindedly focused on taking over the family business, but Yolanda yearns to have a career as a singer. She starts escaping into your boutique, getting outfits to prepare her for auditions and the like, and Fortman starts to come around to enabling her secret career as a pop star. Hers is a very disguise-based storyline, as there are several plot beats that involve you dressing up both her and other people around her to avoid detection by her mother. As her career starts to take off, she gets hired to do a show at her mother's hotel, so you give her a little makeover so that her mom won't notice. It's lucky for her that Margot is face blind. In other instances, you'll have to dress up a conveniently placed similar-looking woman in your boutique to get Margot off Yolanda's trail, or dress up Yolanda in a housekeeper's uniform in order to sneak her out of the family mansion for a concert. In one of these encounters, Margot comes to your boutique and asks for a feminine outfit, and if you do a good job, she will buy out your entire selection of corral items, including duplicates. My boutique was in its struggle era at this point in the game, so I was very grateful for her. Unfortunately, after completing the game and a decent amount of post-game content, it doesn't seem like she ever does this again. Eventually, Margot gets her head out of her ass and realizes that being associated with an internationally famous pop idol would be good for the business at the hotel, and so she stops imprisoning her daughter. Yolanda's storyline is probably the least emotionally loaded out of the three, as hers is mostly just a series of slapsticky shenanigans involving the fact that she's hiding her pop star status from her mother. Yolanda's signature color is blue, her styles are feminine and bold, and her quirk is that she's constantly drinking coffee, which makes her burpy. Finally, there's Alina's storyline. You first run into Alina at the bakery stall, at which she reveals that she eats an entire baguette per day.
I love bread.
Over time, it's revealed that she has a secret double life as a popular content creator by the name of Alinatron, which she will deny if confronted about. One day, she uploads herself singing a song cover to YouTube and gets scouted by Nintendo, after which she confides in you about her double life and starts employing you as her stylist. Alina is a super fan of the fictional sci-fi TV series called Wars of the Space Knights, which she usually refers to as just Wars. She shares this interest with her best friend, Melvin, who she refuses to tell about her idol career and her YouTube channel, even though he's a viewer, double dipping on the convenient face blindness. As she gets more and more famous, the difficulty of keeping her public and private lives separate increases, and eventually Melvin manages to rub the two rocks in his head together hard enough to figure out that famous Alina and best friend Alina are the same person. He feels betrayed, and after hemming and hawing about it for a while, Alina apologizes to him for concealing the truth, and Melvin apologizes to her for being unsympathetic about why she chose to do that. And then they make up before her final performance. For some reason, about half of Alina's songs remain in their original Japanese, instead of being dubbed like everyone else's are. The game does not acknowledge this. Alina's signature color is yellow, her styles are lively and gothic, and her quirk is that she'll bring up Wars of the Space Knights at any opportunity. Hilariously, even though they totally could have ran with pairing Yolanda with her bodyguard or Alina with Melvin, they pretty much didn't give those two any romantic chemistry. You could probably make an argument for Melvin and Alina, but their in-text interactions are not particularly loaded. Like, they clearly value each other's friendship, but you don't catch them pining for each other like you'll find both Rosie and Camilla doing for each other. After all three of their individual storylines are resolved, Nintendo decides to group them up, which they are initially extremely pessimistic about, to the point that the three of them announce to a press conference that they all think the entire venture is cursed and doomed. This whole scene killed me. Like, girls? Do not be saying these things on stage in front of everybody! You end up bringing the three together with the power of matching outfits, and you're given the first quest involving the design tool. After you make this, you're also allowed to name the girl group yourself, which is power that I simply should not be allowed to wield. I didn't realize that every single human being in this city would be wearing these t-shirts, so now everyone in this town is a lesbian. Around the same time, Uncle Tim rolls back into town and reveals that he got a job as the assistant to Kiki Summers, the chief editor of this world's equivalent of Vogue, referred to as Style Boutique magazine. Upon visiting your city and being impressed by the fashion scene, Kiki decides that it's going to be the location for their yearly contest, Style Boutique International. In this competition, several contestants are nominated to become the style icon of the year, and your very own girl group gets nominated as a unit. The final hurdle to pass in this girl group arc is to design stage costumes for their final performance at Style Boutique International, which involves you picking the colors and patterns on 3 pre-made outfits. I believe regardless of the choices you make here, your trio will win the competition, but that said, I can't exactly go back and try to mess it up. After this final performance, which took me about 60 hours of gameplay, you're considered to have finished the game, but like with every title in the series, you can continue playing for long after the credits roll. The idols' performances are this game's equivalent to fashion contests or fashion shows. You're given a preset selection of items that do not affect the stock of your own boutique, and a specific style theme to match, which sometimes also includes a color. Unlike the fashion contests, there's no element of competition. Instead, you receive a hefty stylist fee after the fact. Unfortunately, these performances happen as the plot progresses and not at will, and as far as I'm aware, they do not loop after the main story has been completed. Each of these performances comes with a fully voiced, fully produced song, which really speaks to the whole, we've got to create a soundtrack the likes of which this little dress-up game series has never seen type of thing. I think all of these songs are great. The popular opinion is that they're better in their original language. I mostly feel ambivalent about this claim, except for the intro sequence song, which I genuinely prefer in English. There's also a unique cast of NPCs who follow their own shorter storylines. Some of them are tied to plot events that correspond to different locations in the game. There's Jo, a rocker girl who wants to start up a live music venue but needs to impress her uptight, wealthy brother to do so, and Vincent, her friend who she's trying to help out by doing this. By completing this storyline, you'll unlock the live music venue, which in turn gets the ball rolling on the idol storylines. These two also have romantic subtext, but since this is style savvy, they're not allowed to do anything with it. There's also Xiao Bai, the owner of the town's menswear shop, who was encouraged by your Uncle Tim to move to town and follow his dreams, but his lack of confidence makes him unable to make decisions for his customers. There's also Lorelei, a forceful character who first shows up at your boutique to force you to put together outfits where you have to get everything right on the first try, and through a series of these challenges she comes to realize her true calling as a beautician, and she can be found running the makeup shop from then on. Other unique storylines are given to the more minor NPCs coming to your boutique, and they'll run a range of things like two sisters with different styles learning to see eye to eye, or a salary woman who's trying to cope with the fact that she can't travel anymore by finding a new hobby, or a woman trying to find friends in her new city by connecting to others through style. Once enough gameplay has passed, these unique storylines will start to loop, so don't be surprised if a familiar face comes in announcing that they're so excited to start something for the first time ever that you definitely saw them do before. Somewhere in between the location-based characters and the looping side stories is Angelique, a pop icon worshipped by all three of the game's idols. But they and you develop a closer relationship with her as the story progresses, and eventually she officially takes you on as a stylist. Much of her story centers around her relationship with an unnamed boyfriend. My bets are that it's Uncle Tim. Styling Star customer profile highlights. Connoisseur of cartoon character lore. Wonders why the moon changes shape. Wants to be reincarnated as a stoat. Good friends with an owl. Does a surprisingly good impression of road signs. What does that mean? My favorite non-story NPC is this girl Cleo, who always comes in with a large budget and asks for a bold outfit every time, and I love her. I always send her out looking like a Bratz doll. She'll never end up in one of those type 2 animal print nightmare outfits that I love to force people to wear. Every now and again somebody new will move into town, and because I have to gather this gameplay footage using an emulator, we get some accidental funny moments with the screen positioning, which was intended to have about 1 inch of gap between the two screens but now mashes the two halves of their body together into this unholy amalgamation. Like Fashion Forward, Styling Star allows you to work at both the hair salon and the beautician, except that you get a little boost to your stylist rank instead of making any money. I kind of wish that we still got paid for it. I may have had a lot of complaints about Fashion Forward, but I liked the side hustles. Unlike Fashion Forward, this game allows you to message specific NPCs to make them either come into your shop, go to the hair salon, or go to the beautician. I mostly use this feature to turn the NPC, who is also named Lee, into a copy of myself. As I alluded to earlier, this game sees a return to men's dress-up, except this game does it infinitely better than Trendsetters. All of the men's items are handled by a separate menswear boutique that you can visit and work at similarly to the hair salon and beautician, and as such you never have to stock up on the men's items yourself. And the menswear boutique also already has all the outfit items unlocked. Plus, it's completely optional except for a few isolated story beats. You can mostly skip out on this entirely if it's not interesting to you. The menswear selection is still pretty uninteresting compared to the items in your own boutique, but they've managed it here just about as unobtrusively as possible without it being easy to fail to notice that the feature is there entirely like its execution in Fashion Forward. Styling Star sees the return of Fashion Forward's custom design feature. It's more or less a copy-paste of the tool from Fashion Forward, except you get 3 slots for custom emblems instead of just 1. However, you can only use 1 of them at a time, which I think is pretty lame. The design commission feature has also been removed, save for the couple plot moments in late game that involve custom designs. You can also design a custom shopping bag to use in your boutique and a brand logo, the latter of which is unfortunately executed far worse than you would probably expect. It's just picking the background and border to go around the name of your shop, which is in a font that you can't change. This game's online feature was called Shop Do, which presented itself as a mobile app where you could buy and sell outfits from other real-life players. Like all the wireless features in these games, this is no longer usable. This is the only game in the Style Savvy series with no DLC. Sad. What this game does have is amiibo compatibility. Scanning various amiibo figures from major Nintendo franchises will get you a related pattern that you can use in the design tool. Unlike Trendsetters, which uses the system clock for the season only, this game makes no use whatsoever of your system clock except for the start date of your playthrough. You can either advance time by performing tasks or sleeping, so if you end up taking a break in the middle of the game and come back to it in a different season, you can just depression nap into the appropriate season if you want to. To make it easier on completionists, once you finish the game you get an option to skip forward 1 month at a time. Features like these are what really makes Styling Star stand out from the rest of the series as far as gameplay, because this is the only game in the series that allows you to get 100% completion at your preferred pace, instead of being forced to drag it out over the course of a year. The time skip option isn't the only goodie you unlock at the end of the game. Because each idol has more songs than you'll see in a single playthrough, you unlock all of the ones that you haven't seen. You can also access the ability to change your player character appearance via the title screen. There's also the option to switch out your shop assistant, which I will never do because at this point Archie feels like my own son. Most importantly, you unlock the New Game Plus option, which allows you to carry over everything you've gained into a new playthrough, so no need to toil about everything you would lose if you want to play the main plot again. Super player friendly, 10 out of 10. The Styling Star shopping menu is so streamlined compared to the other titles that using the other game shop menus feels clunky in comparison. Fashion Forward already introduced the feature where you can increase the quantity of all the items you're buying all at once, which helped a lot, but Styling Star's shopping menu lets you add items to your cart just by glancing at the item thumbnails instead of forcing you to take a closer look at each one, which saves a lot of time, especially in late game where you're trying to collect as many items as possible and money isn't so much of an object. Despite the fact that I really do believe Styling Star is the highlight of the series, I can't really recommend that it be your first style-savvy game unless you're very confident that you're not interested in playing any others. There's so many quality of life features added that you might not be thrilled to see what's missing when you go back to previous entries. I would instead recommend playing through the game series in order, and if one of them isn't vibing with you after a couple of hours of gameplay, just skip along to the next one. I truly cannot stress enough how incredible this game's soundtrack is. This game is just jam-packed with extremely well-produced, thoroughly considered music. Like, it's just hit after hit after hit. Tracks that are just unremarkably average, which I would say was the norm for both Trendsetters and Fashion Forward, are definitely the exception here. I would go as far as to say that Styling Star has one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time, and the exhibition hall music for the brand Retrobeat is possibly one of my new favorite tracks in any video game ever. My complaints regarding this game are insignificant compared to previous entries, but this game isn't without its flaws. First off, this game is long, probably 2 to 3 times as long as any other game in the series, and this mostly works to the game's benefit. The storylines are varied and interesting enough to compel you to keep playing for a good long time. However, nearing endgame, I definitely started to feel pretty bored, even skipping entire days just to make the plot move forward. Probably the biggest issue that I have with this game is that it takes a super long amount of time to unlock even the most basic features. I was like 5 or 6 hours into gameplay when I finally unlocked the hair salon, solidly 12 hours in when I unlocked the makeup store, like 14 hours in when I unlocked some customization options for the interior of my boutique, and like 18 or 20 hours to unlock the menswear boutique. I don't mind drawing out the story elements like this, but in a game like this, I generally prefer all the basic features to be at least partially unlocked after about 10 hours of gameplay. Some minor gripes are that you can't skip the outfit success cutscene, which ends up soaking up a lot of your time in the long run, and you can't use the search feature when you're shopping in the exhibition hall, which would be useful if you're looking for specific item types or styles, especially the more ambiguous ones like a formal dress versus a casual dress. Also, they're still doing the skirt deflation thing when layered over jacket, which sucks. I would strongly prefer that either the jacket deform to match the skirt or automatically shorten so as to not overlap with it, depending on which would be less intrusive. All in all, I consider Styling Star to be the definitive style-savvy game. It's truly impressive how many of the kinks from the previous games that they've managed to iron out, and the level of effort the developers put into making this cannot be overlooked. There's gotta be enough dialogue in this game to comfortably fill up a novel. Between the quality of life improvements, the extremely liberating massive stock capacity, the sensible level up system, the engaging intermingled storylines, and the sheer quantity of available dress-up items, this one ended up being my favorite of the series by a pretty wide margin, which is saying something because all of these games are great. Now let's zoom out and take a look at the series as a whole. Style Savvy is a game series intended for a very young minimum target audience, which is why you'll see so many word definitions popping up all the time. However, at no point in any of these games do you end up feel like you're playing a game for babies, which is a trap that many other dress-up games can fall into. This is a perfect example of a piece of all-ages gaming that respects the intelligence of its audience. This is the gaming equivalent of a golden age Disney movie, as compared to a soulless cash grab animated movie where you have to tell yourself, well, at least the kids like it. I genuinely believe that this may be the best dress-up game series ever made. I hear good things about the Nikki games all the time too, but Style Savvy has the major advantage of having no gacha mechanics. That said, while I do believe that these are probably the best dress-up games I've ever played, they're not quite perfect. My biggest overall complaint with these games is how limiting the style categories and brand restrictions can be. Most of the customers have very little tolerance for style mixing, which kind of clips your wings as far as the amount of options that you're actually able to use at a time. Some style categories seem to play well with others, while others are considered clashing, but the game never really codifies this in any way that the player can easily ascertain without a huge amount of trial and error. I don't hate the fact that these style categories exist, but I would have liked it better if they weren't so intensely relied upon. If customers came in asking for a freestyle outfit or a combination style outfit more often, this wouldn't feel like so much of an issue. I would have liked it if these accounted for like 1/4 of the total outfit requests, but in practice, they're extremely rare. The hair customization options in these games also left me wanting more. It's pretty clear that these games were not made with a ton of regard for inclusivity of an international audience. There's not much to speak of in the way of textured hair, especially ones that have a tighter curl pattern than a loose or ringlet curl. Besides that, I would have appreciated a greater variety of hairstyles in general. The other major inclusivity issue is that sometimes the makeup pairs extremely poorly with the darker skinned character models. This was an issue that I found particularly noticeable in Fashion Forward, where many of the small selection of sensible makeup colors look downright offensive on characters with a darker complexion. This game has zero body diversity except for height, which I'm not going to ding it for, because they all have the same bodies for the same reason that fashion dolls have the same bodies, because it's just so much extra work to make everything fit through various body types. There's also that silhouette issue that I've mentioned repeatedly. Styling Star in particular introduced several outerwear items that do not contradict with the voluminous baby doll and gothic skirts, but in all the games that came before, a large proportion of the baby doll and gothic outerwear options would just completely ruin these glorious wide skirts and dresses. I'm not really sure if this issue is fixable, practically speaking, but it sure does harsh the vibe when you need an outerwear piece because it's winter, but everything in your stock deflates the skirts like a sad little party balloon. That's enough griping for now, let's hand out some prizes. I feel like I can't neatly sort these games into a best to worst ranking, so instead I'll give some awards to games that I feel like are best in certain regards. Taking home the trophy of most accessible and low commitment Style Savvy game, it's Style Savvy 1! It's seriously very, very easy to play this game, even if you have no experience working with emulators. Style Savvy 1 is more like a 15 minutes per day mobile game than a sit down and grind kind of experience, so it's best for people who are mildly interested in the series but wouldn't like to invest a huge chunk of time into it. Honorable mention is Trendsetters, which by virtue of its similarity to the original game won't overwhelm you with quantity like the other two sometimes can. And the winner of Best Style Savvy Game for Beginners, it's a tie between Style Savvy 1 and Trendsetters. They're both a great entry point to the series, and your choice between playing either one can just pretty much boil down to which one you think looks better. While later titles might have both quality and quantity on their side, both of these games are a great way to establish an understanding of the fundamental gameplay loop and can reliably indicate to you whether or not you're going to enjoy the rest of the series. Next category, Most Features, and the award goes to Fashion Forward. Fashion Forward has the largest amount of optional gameplay features by far, some of which are sorely missed in Styling Star. The modeling jobs, the design commissions, the traveling, and even that goddamn color palette feature. For better or for worse, Fashion Forward is easily the most jam-packed with stuff to do. Moving on to Best Dress-Up Gameplay. It's Styling Star! With so many outfit items and a gigantic stock capacity, your freedom to dress the customers as you like is wildly enhanced in this title. You get all the space you need to keep stock in every type of item that your customers could possibly ask for, and I certainly can't complain about never having to go through and weed out the stock that isn't moving. The dress-up in Styling Star has all the benefits of the previous versions and very little of the frustrations. And next up, the winner of the Best Looking Style Savvy Game. And that's another win for Fashion Forward. Everything about this game is severely adorable, and while I may have liked the character models a little bit better in Styling Star, the level of consideration given to the environments in this game cannot be overlooked. The world and the UI in Fashion Forward is easily the most stylish and nice to look at. Honorable mention to Style Savvy 1 for the nostalgia factor. And finally, Best Overall. Surprising no one because I pretty much already said it outright, our grand prize today goes to Styling Star. This game has a lot to love about it, but the quality of life improvements really set it over the top. Not only does it have the most seamless gameplay experience by a wide margin, not only is it the best dress-up game by a wide margin, not only does it have the best soundtrack by a ridiculous margin, the story and the characters turn this game into a one-of-a-kind experience that will stick with you for long after you play it. Fashion Forward may have had the most fleshed out setting, but Styling Star feels the most like a world with real people and meaningful interactions. I loved watching the storylines play out. I loved how my relationship with the characters shifted over time. I loved the little moments of character development and how my character acted in support of the main stories of the game instead of being the centerpiece of them. I love this game so much that I'm truly considering doing a new Game Plus after this video is over, and considering how long I've spent making this video, you'd think I'd be pretty tired of playing Style Savvy by now. But alas, Styling Star is so good that I don't care that I've spent 200 cumulative hours on these games over the past few months. In truth, all of these games are excellent, all of them are a credit to the genre of dress-up games, and there are none of them that I would say aren't worth your time. Even if you're not typically interested in dress-up games, I would give Style Savvy a try. With its compelling gameplay loops, quality craftsmanship, and high degree of customizability, you may end up discovering your new favorite game on the DS or 3DS catalog. Well, that was fun. It's so nice to talk about stuff that I genuinely wholeheartedly enjoy. But now it's time to put that all behind me, because friends, the Style Savvy series is dead and rolling in its grave. We now come to Fashion Dreamer for the Nintendo Switch, released in November 2023. So the thing about Fashion Dreamer is that it is not a Style Savvy game. It's a Sin Sophia game, the same developers as Style Savvy, but it is not, nor does it claim to be, a Style Savvy game. However, Style Savvy players expected a game that's about the same caliber of quality as Style Savvy, and the game that they got was not that. I actually played Fashion Dreamer first. I was completely unfamiliar with the Style Savvy series before I started playing, and frankly, I assume that's the only way that it's possible to get any enjoyment out of this game at all. Because once you know how much of a step down Fashion Dreamer is from any of the Style Savvy games, it kind of ruins the whole experience. So much so that I went from pretty much liking this game but thinking it had a lot of flaws, to completely hating it and being extremely confident that I'll never pick it up again. I'd like to make it clear that this game is not shovelware. There is definitely effort and intention put into this game, and it's superficially perfectly serviceable. However, I believe a lot of the choices that were made were deeply misguided. The conceit of Fashion Dreamer is that it exists within a metaverse-esque social media app, and the goal is to become a top influencer by creating as many outfits and accumulating as much engagement on your posts as possible. Depending on whether you're playing in offline or online mode, the world will be populated with either NPCs or other players' avatars. To me, this social media setup is where the game fundamentally went wrong. I don't need to play a game to endure the dismal numbers go up slog of social media that's already my entire life. It's just a much less interesting mode of gameplay. Very few people get to run their own boutique, but anybody can try to be a social media influencer. The gameplay loop is so simple that I have very little to say about it. You acquire items, dress up the characters sitting around the world, and just rinse and repeat until you're a bona fide influencer, after which the game hits you with a 12-minute, unskippable credit sequence, which feels less like a loving tribute to its creators and more of a list of who to blame for the fact that you just wasted $50. If you're playing efficiently, you can knock out this game in no time at all. For comparison, on speedrun.com, the original Style Savvy has an any % world record of 7 hours. Fashion Dreamer has a world record of 12 minutes and 55 seconds. A non-speedrunner could probably hit the credits 2 or 3 times in the same amount of time it would take them to hit the credits once in Style Savvy 1. This game carries over a lot of the issues that I had with the Style Savvy series and very little of its positives. For example, the search feature is just totally gutted. Rest in peace, style categories, I'm sorry that I ever complained about you. I mean, style categories are still kind of present, and characters will still request that their outfit conform to specific style types. But the fact that you can no longer sort by these categories renders these styles 100% vibes-based, with no clarification on which items fit into what category. The item silhouette issues from Style Savvy are as present as ever. Like, wow, nice skirt. It sure would be a shame if someone were to deflate it. A huge proportion of the clothing items in this game are what you would expect to find in the basic style category in Style Savvy, a category that you were forced to use very infrequently in all of those games because it's just so boring to make outfits with. The item categories are also gutted in comparison to Style Savvy. Necklaces, gone. Gloves, gone. Bags, gone. I just feel like if you're going to release a dress-up game that is narratively inferior to Style Savvy and single-mindedly focuses on the dress-up aspect, then you need to make the dress-up top-notch. And Fashion Dreamer just does not arrive at the goal. And what do you know, the craptastic interior design feature is also back, now featuring ceiling items which are not allowed to overlap with the items on the floor. This is criminal. This design feature is for Fashion Dreamer's sad little replacement for your boutique, which only has practical use in online mode, because you can visit other people's boutiques and get their items for yourself. Keep in mind that every online feature is guaranteed to be rendered unusable at some indeterminate point in the future, which means that after this game goes offline, there goes about half the game that you paid for. Another issue I have with this game is that it severely lacks a sense of progression, and this is mostly due to the fact that currency is not used to collect more fashion items. Even in Fashion Forward, which I also mentioned lacked a sense of progression, you can't just effortlessly speedrun through the game because you're capped by how much money you have. And this, by necessity, forces you to carefully consider what your buying priorities are. Instead, there are two sets of currency, one for a gacha that gives you customizable outfit items at random, because a stupid gacha mechanic was exactly what this game needed, and another to customize items that haven't been received from the gachapon. The fashion design tool is close to the ones featured in Fashion Forward and Styling Star, but slightly reduced. Getting to choose the patterns and custom emblems have been cut, leaving only the option to pick the colors, which is pretty disappointing. But even though this feature is limited by currency, there's zero limit to how quickly you can accumulate items that other players have made. To get more outfit items, you just go into online mode and click, 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 take as much stuff as you can before you end up hitting your item limit, and due to the fact that there's absolutely no cap on how much of this stuff you can take, you're gonna end up hitting that pretty quickly and spending a lot of your time afterwards weeding down your current selection. One of the only things that's meant to keep players returning repeatedly are these limited time events where you complete quests to unlock special items, and once you miss the window for these, the only way to get the items is by taking other people's customized versions of them from the online mode. The gameplay to complete these quests is dry as hell, just ticking off boring items on a list. And yet another thing that's likely to just dissolve into thin air once online service is discontinued. While there have been some notable improvements added in later updates, I think that the state in which this game was shipped was downright unacceptable. The amount of interesting items used to be far more limited, the item limit was way too small, and it had this terrible loading issue where the items in the dress-up menu would take an extremely long time to load, and would unload the moment that the icons left the screen, which made for a terrible experience when it came to browsing your list of items. And plenty of the issues present at release are still a problem to this day. My biggest issue is that the dress-up menus are just painful to interact with, especially once you've gathered a more robust selection of items. The search feature only allows you to sort by item type and color, not any more specific item types or styles like they had in the style-savvy games. It's all sorted into one gigantic menu instead of the individual item category menus, and the scroll speed is obnoxiously slow. The dress-up menu loading issue might have been fixed, but the overall loading times are as bad as ever. Connecting to online mode takes so long that you might end up assuming that the servers are down. In general, interacting with this game feels unbearably slow. You move slowly, there's lengthy loading screens between every individual interaction, and everything seems to just take up more time than it needs to. It also used to have this pretty severe issue regarding the music volume. At release, this game was deafeningly loud to the point where I had to play it with the volume on my TV set to 1. And just, how? How do you mess up the mastering like that? Did nobody notice that this game was blowing out their speakers during QA? There was no way to lower the volume from the game settings either, and I still just have to wonder how the heck this happened. Fortunately, this seems to now have been fixed, and a music volume option has been added. Speaking of sensory pain, this game sure does love its blindingly white backgrounds. Every customization menu, from the dress-up to the character creator to the fashion design, is pure, stark, eyeball-blasting whiteness. Playing this game in the dark is just out of the question because you will have tears running down your cheeks after less than an hour. There is also no dark mode to speak of. Alongside that, there is not even a semblance of a story element. You don't feel like you get to know the NPCs over time, and you don't even wish that you could, because all of these characters are literally just the personification of a single character trait. Like, seriously, this game makes Fire Emblem characterization look deep. Unlocking the new areas offers nothing but an aesthetic change, and the whole world just feels so sterile and drab and lifeless. I really couldn't recommend this game to anybody, even people who are desperate for a Switch dress-up game. So the boutiques and customer interactions are gone, the story element and lovable characters gone, the level of outfit customizability available in even the first style-savvy game.
She's gone!
But guess what isn't gone? That's right, compulsory menswear dress-up. Oh, excuse me, I meant compulsory Type B dress-up. For some reason, perhaps in some misguided attempt at inclusivity, instead of using men's and women's, or even the more neutral variant of masculine and feminine, this game labels the different body types with Type A for feminine bodies and Type B for masculine bodies. My problem with this is, if I said to a non-Fashion Dreamer player, "Hey, could you design a Type B outfit for me?" They'd be like, "What?" What is type B? What does that mean? These labels are totally meaningless and unmemorable, and if they were trying to avoid a rigid gender binary, then they completely failed, because guess what? Menswear dress-up sucks in this game just as much as it did in Trendsetters. And yet, it accounts for an even larger proportion of the gameplay. If you're going to act like gender distinctions don't matter, then at least give me the same dress-up catalog between the different body types, or at the very least an equivalent selection. There are a sparse amount of more interesting items in the men's dress-up, but not nearly enough to make an appreciable difference. At least in this game you're able to give your player character a masculine body type, which I genuinely do think is an improvement. And guess what the real icing on the cake is? The reason that men's fashion is compulsory? Welcome back, color palette mechanic! And somehow, they managed to make it worse! The game doesn't even tell you that you need to do this. I was under the impression that there was no point to dressing up the NPCs because the game doesn't even hint at the fact that you need to increase their rank in order to unlock new customization options. So for many hours I was just like, oh, the character creator in this game kind of sucks, oh well. But no, in order to unlock new colors and hairstyles in this game, you need to rank up with the NPCs, which means you have to encounter them many times, dress them up over and over, and then there's a random chance upon leveling up for them to give you a new customization option. Meaning, you could have an NPC with an eye color you want at rank 20 who still hasn't given it to you, even though a different NPC gave it to you at rank 6. Not only that, but the NPC's spawn chance is also random, which means they could literally get bumped out of the rotation and then you have no choice to get anything from them until one day they suddenly reappear. Rainbow, I'm sorry I was so harsh on you, I didn't know how bad it could get. But at least I don't have to play this game for an entire calendar year! I can see myself returning to any one of the Style Savvy games, especially the original and Styling Star, but I will be extremely surprised to find myself ever organically returning to Fashion Dreamer ever again. It was not worth the price, even on sale, it was not worth the time that I have invested in it, and it is simply not a worthy successor to the Style Savvy series. To put it simply, if I was told there was a new Style Savvy game and heard that it was a faithful continuation of the original series, I would happily pay $60. Fashion Dreamer, however, is $50, and I got it half off at $25, and I believe I have overpaid. And don't get me wrong, this game isn't devoid of positive qualities. I did end up playing it for over 30 hours unbidden when it was first released, but I do feel like I started to sense some major diminishing returns the deeper I got into it. At first you're like, woohoo, free dress-up clothes, gimme, gimme, gimme! But then you hit that goddamn item limit, and so much for having fun picking out new clothes. And a lot of the outfit items are very cute, until you end up layering it with something that ruins it. The hairstyle customization options are also a lot more inclusive, even with the fairly limited selection you're given at the beginning of the game. Also, the online mode doesn't require a Nintendo Switch Online subscription, which is a rare treat. I can't deny that this game is pretty, and there are a lot of extremely cute clothing items that might make the experience worthwhile for you, but the amount of things that feel poorly considered or incomplete is a total deal breaker for me. Which is a shame, because look at this star dress. If only the whole game was as good as this star dress. And like, at a glance, this game looks nice. The environments look appealing when they're not completely blasting your eyeballs out of your skull. It doesn't quite reach the level of a bad game, more just like infuriatingly mid. And it's infuriating because it could have been genuinely good. Sinsofia has already proven themselves to be capable of making not just good, but excellent dress-up games. And comparison is truly the thief of joy, because now that I know what could have been, my appraisal of this game is at rock bottom. I know I said earlier that Style Savvy is dead, but that may not actually be the case. It's possible that the series could be revived sometime in the future, but with the lackluster sales figures of Fashion Dreamer, the future of Sinsofia dress-up games is looking pretty bleak. I have a more in-depth review of this game as a Patreon exclusive video, so if you're interested in my takes on this game before I had any experience with Style Savvy, I'd recommend you check that out. Let's say my appraisal of this game used to be much more glowing, if not any less complainy. Have you played Style Savvy? Do you want to play Style Savvy? Did you hate Fashion Dreamer as much as I did, or do you think I'm being unfair to it? Is Rainbow your mortal enemy? Let me know with a comment. As always, the best way to support me is by subscribing to my Patreon. This winter has been a difficult time for me for a variety of reasons, and now more than ever, my supporters are my biggest motivation to drag my husk out of bed and get stuff done. Thanks so much to Khan, Dr. Dreamerella, Fishcatch, Grizzly, Luca Anastasius, Ms. Goat, Nicole Manassian, and Ren. Okay. Bye.